to help some new OOT basics for those that are joining online leagues or just playing for the first time. Hopefully this helps a little bit. It's a lot to get into, but at least maybe this covers some basics, right? So the tabs themselves obviously are up here between the file, the game, your info, the league info, your team info, things like that. Online leagues are basically a rinse and repeat cycle where the commissioner will upload a file, and then us as team owners or GMs will download a file. We access that here by online league and download. And I already did this. It does take a few minutes, usually about 5 or so, depending on your connection and the file size, things like that. When we're all done, each time we import, download, I'm sorry, this file here, we'll make our tweaks. I'll read the mail, make sure my lineup's set, and then when I'm all said and done, we will save and then export. And then that's how the commissioner then pulls in all the files from each team and then runs the sim, which is usually 7 days for most leagues. And then when the sim is complete, they upload the file, and then that's where the cycle comes back in. We download it, we tweak, we save, and then we export. So that's kind of the basics there. This is basically our manager's office home screen. You can customize this if you like. I usually just leave it on default. Over here is our team, basically our team tab. We can change this too. If we wish to go into another team and see rosters, you can click on it and I can show you how that's done. But I usually kind of manage most of my team from here, rosters and transactions, mainly because all the tabs I generally need are right up here. So whether that's, in this case, I'm looking at the rosters as a whole, basically looking at my my whole organization from my active roster, MLB roster, to my 40-man, to my minor league teams here. And you can adjust these as you need, right? So if I wanted to put this as my international players, then we can do so. Like I said, it's opening day, so I have a lot of work to do because, as you see, I have 42 players. However, I need to get it down to 26, right? And you can see how each team here is capped at a certain amount. So if you're adding players in, then you basically need to get rid of some. You can go, I guess a couple things as we're looking at each roster. You can click on the top icon here and it will put as ascending or descending. Right? Potential is what the player is expected to become or potentially can become. Overall is what they are now. All right, and then all these attributes, there's one for hitting, which is contact, and one for pitching, which is stuff, power for hitting, movement for pitching, eye for hitting, control for pitching, and overall. If you want to go into any specific player here, you can just click on their icon, right, and then it gives all their information, their personal details, their status, all right, their stats, and then their basic pitching ratings. And you see the potential, versus the current, right? So you see how much growth is possible here. In this case, Beaver's pretty much maxed out, right? He's might have a scouting accuracy of very high. It means my scout is very confident in extreme accuracy with this scouting report. The stamina, the ability to hold runners, his position fielding wise, all those type of things, his personality. You can also go into areas such as scouting, right? And you can see the scouting history, some of the developments here, the actual write-up of it, and then the charts of them themselves, right? We can also go into his contract info, right? His age, his roster information, his contract information, how many years, his opt-out things. We can negotiate extensions, things like that, right? They'll be pretty straightforward with you, however they want to go. As we anytime there's a list here, we can do things such as like select all players. I don't really want to do that in this case. We can also individually select a player, right? And I'm just kind of right click on him there, and then now it gives me some options to do either open player profile, scouting report, put the player on a short list, which you can create. You can create notes, you can offer extensions, all those things. Usually I will do this and I'll come down to transactions, right? And here's where I'm kind of play with the transactions themselves. Now this guy, he's staying on my major league roster, but getting down to a guy that may not here, for example, this guy here, he's not going to be on my major league roster. I am going to put him into AAA, right? Now he has a major league contract, which means that if I wish to get rid of Tyler Phillips, right, then now I'm going to try one more time, make sure I pick the right guy. Promote to AAA. Yep. Okay. Now that means because he has a major league contract, that what I have to do in order to get him down there is I have to waive and designate him for assignment. Okay. And that means yeah. That means that now I can find him on my waivers in DFA area. So players assigned for designated for assignment. He's got 15 days. He's got 8 as far as waivers go. Right. And the important thing here is kind of look at the ledgers. So in this case, you can see a couple of the icons here. You'll see the legend down here, exactly what they mean. So your 40-man roster is really important to manage. That's going to be basically, the players that you can use for your major league team, players that are under major league contract to some degree, and also players that are protected for things like Rule 5 draft as that comes around each season. And so, yeah, that's how we manage our rosters. Our injured list will always give a kind of a recap of what's going on as the player's done. You can just simply kind of drag him to where he needs to go. It's saying active roster is full, which makes sense because it says 41, but I needed 26. So as I work this out on my own time, I will get Taylor Trammell, who is one of my starting players, onto that roster. He was out for most of spring training there. Front office is an important element. This is basically where we're looking at everything from ticket prices to attendance to revenue, all these things. This is really the important part here, right? How much money do we have for free agents? How much money do we have for extensions? Market size, fan loyalty, fan interest. Cleveland, it's a small market. No surprise that money's tight, but all this info is available here to view and look at and tweak things like that. Scouting budgets, player development budgets, amateur free agent budgets. I can get into those things deeper if it helps. Right. From here, we can also look at our schedule. Anytime we're on the schedule itself, we can just click on it and it will bring us right to the box score. Okay, so I personally like to look at most of the box scores. This is spring training, but just to see what my guys are doing. All right, we all know what box scores are, so that's pretty easy. Down the bottom, it will give you the player of the game. It'll also give you any injuries, and you can click on any of these guys at any time. So I can kind of click on him and see his age, switch hitter, 53, potential rating, scout very high. He's pretty fast, fields pretty well. All that stuff is pretty available as we go through. Also from this tab, we can go in and manage our pitching, right? So we can set up our rotation size, we can set up our pitch counts, we can set up our preferences as far as how we want to manage these guys, and then also our bullpen and how we want to adjust these. Again, this roster is huge right now because it is spring training, but same thing with lineups, right? So now a couple things. I usually like to kind of start with the graphical depth chart here, and then there's a couple options. We have DH in this league, in both leagues. So in this case, there's only 2 options: right-hand pitch versus DH, and left hand. For the leagues that have more, you'll obviously see some different options. But now you can just kind of click and drag the guys here. You can also adjust to how often they're going to play. This is spring training, so this will not be the same setup I have as far as how often these guys are playing, the backups are playing for the regular season. Pinch hitters, blah, blah, blah. You can just kind of click through, but basically click and drag type thing. And then when you go into lineups, you go into lineups overview. Now you can kind of click and drag these guys as you wish. You can even ask up here, you can ask for the manager or your bench coaches to help with certain things. It could be the whole thing. It could be a couple of them. There's a couple different ways to do that. And then also you can do 7-day lineups. 7-day lineups, you want to make sure that these settings are the way you would like them to be. I don't personally like to have my pitchers set in 7-day lineups. I like my rotation to be fluid. So I don't drag and drop my pitchers into this spot. But basically at any time you can just simply paste my left-hand lineup versus my right-hand pitching, right? And it's going to do paste it in there. Now if I wish to adjust any particular player, I can come in here and easily drag in, this guy for here and so on and so forth, right? But you can make your 7-day lineups if you prefer to give guys off, to have certain matchups. You can see the pitchers, so on and so forth. But that's basically our roster area. It's pretty important in that setup, and that's basically from here. you can access all those things as we already saw. There is a ton of information in reports and information. There's a ton of information in logs, all right, in team history, so on and so forth. This is the Major League tab, so this will give anything from whatever's going on at the time. It could be playoffs in this case, it's spring training, preseason predictions, the league homepage, which is going to be just information about the league in general, scores, transactions, rookie draft when we get there. You can always view it ahead of time and kind of see some of the the rules with the order, the pool itself. I can assist with how to scout for these guys, but it's pretty easy. It's basically, request scouting report. If you want to do a bunch of them, you can, do a whole batch, right? You can also customize filter, which I highly recommend doing. In this case, I'm not going to spend the time here doing it, but it's something you can spend time doing. Under this tab, which is your name, you can also go to mail. Mail will come in pretty much every sim, and it will give you any information. You don't have to read through all these. You'll get used to kind of what makes sense. Right now, I am scouting for the draft, so there's a ton of information regarding scouting. I don't necessarily look at all of these. Sometimes if I have time, I will, but sometimes more often than not look at the contract updates, things like that. If there's any injuries, so I will scroll through here a little bit to kind of get an idea. And even if it's not my player, right? I just want to see, okay, Juan Soto's out, kind of read the story. Anytime there's an icon here you can click, health status, he's out for 5 weeks. So it's pretty important, I think, to kind of read through this stuff. Again, I'm not going to honestly do it here, but the mail is pretty important to do. At any point when you're done with it, you can hit read all or delete all, whatever you want in there. Yeah, and that's pretty much the basics here as far as just kind of navigating around. Sometimes short lists are really important, where you can actually create some short lists that whether you're scouting for upcoming free agents or new teams or things like that, you can make and title different short list players here. That's easy to access at any point. When all is said and done, right, we're going to hit save, and then pretty quick process here, and then we will hit export itself. For the most part, on a normal sim, I'm looking through the box scores from that given week, and I'm seeing if my team has any injuries. I'm seeing if there's any other roster areas to attend to, and I'm adjusting my lineups if I need be. I'm personally a big fan of the 7-day lineups. Not everyone is. I'll adjust those, and as I do all that, I read my mail. That's when I would typically hit save. And I usually do it a couple times. Anytime I make some action, through the course of tweaking here, I like to save it just to save my space in case it deletes. My computer crashes or whatever. But in the end, when I'm all done, I will come over here and hit export, right? As I do that, Slack is a really integral part to our communication here, right? I'm in a handful of leagues, so there's a bunch of information here, but this is the Slack info. A lot of times in the announcement tab here, you will see the basic info. The commissioner's telling us that the file has been updated. It tells you the date. It tells you exactly what's going on. Okay, when the next sim is, so on and so forth. All the tabs are pretty similar through each league. Direct messages, so on and so forth. The Slack bot is really cool because it gives you some basic info as like new people join and things like that. But I also like it because we can set it up where it pings us every time an export is received. As you see here, it did this yesterday at 9:13 p.m. And the easiest way to do that is if you come into the particular league page, right? Now we can go into preferences, and under preferences, you can choose to have the Slack message on export either enabled or disabled. If you disable it, then nothing will happen. If you enable it, then every time you export, you'll get pinged in Slack saying, "Yep, it took. You're good to go." All right, just make sure you save the settings here. The league itself through, the page itself is really helpful. This is a great way to view the league and any information at any point. Especially if you're not on the league file, since we can't, everything has to be done in the game itself, and the game can only be done on computer base. This is a good way to at least view anything that you wish to. from your phone, from a tablet, from a different computer. We also will draft through here. When the draft comes up, the draft is done on this website. It's done by having all the pool of players listed. It's also done by us creating lists and things like that, and you can see all the picks here done through the course of the draft itself. And that's the basics. It's a long video, I apologize, but just to give you an idea of what's what, happy to help with any questions.